in a minute or so. Time has started. Welcome everybody to the SEDATE session at IETF 116. Can't believe we got this far. Hopefully this is it. I'll take this off just so that I can speak a little bit more clearly into this microphone. Maybe here we have the note well. I'm sure by this late stage of the meeting, most of you have seen this. If you have not, please do read it. If you haven't read it for a while or you're bored or something, please read it again. It has many interesting details about how we operate here. Here's some meeting tips. If you're in the room and you haven't yet scanned the QR code, please do so that we know you're present. And if you're remote, you've clearly figured this out already because you're here. Thank you. Some more interesting links. So the rough, since we have one document, rough agenda that I slapped together for this is 5 minutes, which we will probably not need all of, to introduce the session, some discussion about our one document. We are currently in the process of rechartering, and I have one more slide about that. And then once we've done this recharter and had this one document published, I believe we're basically going to close down unless anyone has new work that they think is best suited here and within our charter. So the one thing that we have done since last time we met, we had the NIT that -0000 isn't legal in ISO 8601. So that's a problem. And much debate was had on the mailing list about what to do. And eventually we settled on rechartering. Instead of any changes to RFC 3339 are explicitly outside the charter of this working group, we've inserted the word other in that last line there, and we have specified this particular change and said this document will update RFC 3339 to remove that definition and to align the document with the reality of how people are actually using it these days. And that's all I have in my slides. So any agenda bashing before we get rolling here? Guess not. All right. Yes, Murray would like to be here for the recharter discussion. Murray has an issue. Murray has 2 working groups that are both rechartering that he's the area director for meeting right now, which is very inconvenient. So he's going to come towards the end, which is why the rechartering discussion is going to be had at the end. But this is just some info about where our current state is. So if Carsten's finished with the afternoon tea, I'll switch to your slides.
Thank you. How many people are in the group right now?
We have 15 people present, okay. Including some remotes.
Because in university, I don't start to talk for at least 10 people.
Oh, well, we have space for a few people to leave if anyone else has somewhere you'd rather be.
And there are empty chairs.
Okay, so our document is from IETF data standard. Current version is -07. That was submitted to ISG in January. And, well, ISG cannot process it until our charter.
I'm sorry, the gentleman who's talking on the microphone, we can't hear him remotely.
I think maybe you need to switch it on.
Thank you.
Blah, 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 blah. Okay, thank you. So we have one document that has been submitted to the ISG in January, but cannot go through the full process because our charter currently doesn't allow it, as was just discussed. We do have an AD review, which came in a couple of hours before I took off to Japan. So that hasn't been processed yet, but it will be. So there is a need for a -08. Our shepherding AD changed to Murray. So same guy who's approving the rechartering. And yeah, that's, I think, the document status. Next slide. So what did the AD review, which Francesca did, say? Well, it had a few editorial fixes. That's always the case. There is a certain lack of detail on error handling. We had lots of discussion about error handling, but apparently not in all places where it's needed. So that will bring some mild technical changes when we process it. And we forgot to put in IANA designated expert guidelines. That will probably also need a little bit of discussion. And finally, we have a reference to the CLDR. And there was a time in my life when I would have been able to expand this acronym, but can't right now. Common Language Data something, repository.
TLDR.
And that's a bit of a problem because it is the best reference we have. And yeah, so that is maybe a sorry state, but that's where we are. So Justin Grant actually has jumped in with a PR based on this AD review, which is great, saves a lot of time. He may not have all the context to answer all of the items there, so we need to verify this between the editors. So that's half of the work for -08. Next slide. And the other half is that since we completed the working group last call, there have been a few new inputs. Justin Grant has put in a pull request number 35, which has a few ideas on improving the English and making things more understandable. And then there are 4 issues open that all ask for minor improvements. We now have the opportunity to roll these things in, given that the document is back in the working group, so to say. And I think we should use this opportunity. So it may take a couple of days later to handle these things, but we might have a better document in the end. But of course, that requires that the working group participates and looks at those changes once we have integrated them, which the working group should do for the changes we do for Francesca's review anyway. So I think that's about it. Do I have a 4th slide? Yeah. So the plan is to address the AD comments, to integrate those GitHub issues and PRs. And, oh, I'm already saying 09. No, I meant an 08. Ship an 08 to the Easter Bunny. That's the plan. Any questions? I think I'm done.
Yes, not.
I have one question. I don't know if it's a question for Karsten for the group, but there were those 2 issues brought up around the IANA expert guidance, and
Yes.
is there a place we can essentially borrow somebody else's text for that, or otherwise? I'm sure somebody's done that before.
You're guessing my mode of work. Yes, that's what I plan to do.
Okay.
I haven't actually looked into the details here. So typically what we want to do is first establish a common understanding of what the good outcome, long-term outcome for this registry would be, and then discuss things that the designated expert would need to do to steer things in the direction of a good long-term outcome. But yeah, we first have to understand what is it that could go wrong, for instance, and that we have to make sure this is done right. And I haven't thought much about that. And my request for the working group would be to also think about this and discuss what the designated expert should try to keep under control. And your other question was?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
good.
So these are the changes since we're sitting around. Well, Murray has walked into the room. Welcome, Murray. When you show up in the data tracker, I'll believe. Oh, you did show up in the data tracker. I believe in you. You're real. Aha. You got a little yellow dot next to you, so that's pretty special. So this is all the changes that have gone in, or that will be hopefully merged in once the editors are happy.
And just as an aside, I'm not sure if Ujwal reached out, but I think he's sick right now, so that's I don't think we have him on the call right now, but he's sick and he apologizes for not being able to be here.
Cool. All right, thanks for the presentation. So Murray, I guess to bring you up to speed on what's happened with the working group so far, if I bring back up the slide, it has the interesting bit in here. Basically, we discovered a nit. And so we have issued a new version of the charter, which instead of saying any changes to RFC 3339 are explicitly outside the charter for this working group, we have carved out this one tiny little change and said, this one is in scope for the working group because we have to fix it. And once that is done, and these editorial changes are in, we believe the document will be ready to publish. And we believe at that point that this working group is done and has no other work. No one has proposed anything since then.
So just this is the change that is already in, it's on the telechat, right?
Yes.
This is up for internal review. Okay. And then the document we haven't seen it yet.
It's already been submitted, and then
AD evaluation.
AD evaluation. Okay. Francesca has given a review. Francesca's here, so if you want to pop in, Francesca.
Yeah, hi. Yes, I have done a AD review, and there was nothing major really that has come up during my AD review. I had a couple of questions. I see that there was an answer recent from Justin, but I haven't really had the time to look at the answer. But yeah, I expect there's going to be a revised ID from that review. It doesn't need, I mean, except for maybe one point, which is references, which might be annoying to, just from a process point of view, might be annoying to fix later. It does, like, it's nothing that absolutely needs to be fixed before last call. It could go to last call, but anyway, we are doing the recharter before last call, so I expect that there will be a revision before last call.
Okay. The current schedule, it will finish recharting at the end of April, I think. It's got to go through 2 telechats.
Okay.
So we can last call it as soon as that's done. Okay, I get it. Thanks.
And if we are really in a hurry, we could do the last call at the same time as the last call on the rechartering, so the second half of April, if Murray is so inclined. But it doesn't really, yeah, it just adds maybe 2 more weeks. And it would need a note in the last call for the draft to say, by the way, this is going on at the same time.
Yeah, Pete and I were just talking off the mic that, there's a very slim chance that somehow the rechartering doesn't take, and so now you put this thing through against its original charter, and someone might red flag it. Roll the dice. Yeah. What are the odds? So we could try it, and if it gets pulled all the way back, then we just do it. All right.
Simultaneity, parallelism. Did the chairs understand that?
Yeah, at some point we'll understand it. Yeah, maybe both at the same time.
Yeah.
It'll settle.
But that appears to be a date in the future.
All right.
Okay, here's the plan. Are you ready to submit a new version with all the edits, or has that happened?
No.
Before Easter. When's Easter?
Next weekend.
Next weekend. And it has been working group last called. This is the result. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
As soon as you do that, hit me up somewhere, messenger, email, whatever, and I'll start the last call, and we'll gamble that the parallelism is going to work.
Thank you. I don't know if we want to spend the remaining 45 minutes we have of this session doing any wordsmithing or looking over the document, or if we would just leave that for the editors to do. Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a question for Francesca from your review about references, and then Bron, I think it might be helpful if we're all here. There's not that many open issues remaining that we need to work out from Francesca's feedback, so it might be great, just efficiency wise, if we could maybe work out those remaining open issues here, if that's possible.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so maybe we could start on the references. So Francesca, you brought up the issue of the references to CLDR, and there was another one there that were GitHub links. And so the challenge is, so first of all, there were two links that we had. One was CLDR, and one was like I don't know how to describe it. It's like the essentially the DTD of the XML data that CLDR uses. I think the only thing that's needed is this list of less than 20 identifiers. And so currently those are managed by CLDR. Those are stable in the sense that it hasn't been changed since 2016, and it's had the same GitHub link since then. So we could certainly find another place to put it. But I'm sort of wondering how, I assume this isn't the only time where people essentially use their source code as the data that is authoritative. How do other folks handle that same problem of essentially not having another place other than GitHub where data is retained?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it has come up not many times. I don't know if anybody sitting here has more experience than me. I'm thinking Pete or Murray even, or Karsten.
So I think this is one of those excuse me, usual cases where a document sets up a registry that has a pretty wide approach to acceptance, and then populates this registry with an example. Because it's always bad to have a registry that is just set up and there is no example for people to look at and see what they have to supply. So we went for this U-CA thing as an example. We could also choose another example. So if somebody comes up with one that is easier to do, then maybe we should do that. But most people quickly understand this U-CA example. And my take is that the designated expert, whom we haven't given any instructions on this, I'm sorry, that the designated expert would accept this registration because the CLDR database is well known in the industry, and it's clear what this registration would mean. I mean, it's maybe not in the Library of Congress yet, but it's well enough established that implementers will know what to do. So the actual registration here does not necessarily have the same normative longevity that we would expect for a standard Strike document. And that's always a problem in this kind of let's populate the registry with at least one item things.
Yeah, so this is something that could be updated later by IANA if the location changed. So it's not quite as locked in stone as anything else in an RFC would be, I guess.
And so can I propose that we sort of keep the GitHub links that we have now, and then if something bad happens in the future and CLDR people get hit by an asteroid and we need to change that, then we can deal with it at that time. Would that be okay with the ADs?
Yes. It's parallel tracks, Murray.
So that was a yes?
It was a, can you help me understand? Give me a little more context. I'm new to where you were before.
Yeah, probably just bring up I think I'm seeing Carson's screen here. Sorry, it's a little small, so I'm having a little trouble reading it. But
that's my screen.
Oh yeah,
probably.
Sorry, Brian.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, so this document is about adding hints to a date and time piece of information. And these hints often contain some form of cultural references. And in particular, in this example, we are referencing different kinds of calendars in which this timestamp, which itself is rooted in Gregorian time, in world time, in which this timestamp is preferably presented to a user. And that's the hint. And the CLDR registry is a place where the calendars of this world are being collected and information about them is collected and so on. Okay. There's no other place that is as comprehensive, to my knowledge, than this one. Okay. So the registration would lose if we were going to a different source. But we don't have to do calendars here. We could do something different. It's just something that we had in hand as a complete proposal.
Okay. This is the CLDR calendar reference?
Yes.
What you're talking about?
Yeah, there's the reference in the current draft of the RFC has a pointer to an XML file in the CLDR. So CLDR is essentially a bunch of data that defines localization for Java, for JavaScript, for essentially anybody that uses it. And one of those files is a list of calendar names and calendar IDs. The calendar IDs, a CLDR's policy is it's like a roach motel. Is like once an ID gets in there, it never comes out. Right? They have endless backwards compatibility for all of their IDs, and so they've had
like an RFC. Okay.
Yeah, and so they've had I think 19 calendar IDs. One of them is deprecated, and it's marked as deprecated in that XML file, but otherwise it's it'll be around forever. Now the URL, let's say they reorganize their repo at some point, that URL might change, but the IDs themselves are not going anywhere.
If I can,
owns this? Go ahead, Francesca.
Sorry, if I can just add something. This reference is used. I don't know if this was clear from what Carsten was saying, but there is an IANA registry that is defined, and there is one parameter or one registered parameter in there, and the value that this parameter can take are the one defined by this CLDR calendar reference. So this CLDR calendar reference is not in the IANA registry per se, but there is a pointer to the section that says the value that it can take are these ones. So yeah. So that's why
this isn't creating the registry. The registry itself is the XML file that's referred to by a GitHub thing somewhere that I saw just a minute ago.
No. So
I see that it's creating a registry, but the XML thing he's talking about is not this. It's something different.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'd be helpful. Could we open that file in the browser? It'll make it a lot clearer just to take a look at it.
Cool.
Bron, are you able to open it there?
Yep. I'm just scrolling to where it is. So here.
Information.
CLDR calendar, yeah.
Of course, that link's going to have space I need to remove, isn't it? Might help if I remove the trailing rubbish. There we go.
There we go.
This is the registry.
Well, these are the ID. So when for the name attribute, of these type elements, these are the various calendar IDs that are supported by CLDR.
So we're treating this as a registry, and it looks like Unicode Consortium owns this?
Correct. Unicode owns this. CLDR is like a working group inside of Unicode.
So this is a write-only registry. This is what Unicode considers to be a registry, and it's write-only, basically. Or like no delete, I guess is the right way to look at it.
Once an element gets in here with a name attribute on it, that is going to be there forever.
This is Pete Resnick. So I have a question. How do things get in here? Someone put an application into the Unicode consortium?
Yeah, so there's a CLDR working group. I actually was at one of their meetings this morning, and so you would essentially go and approach that working group and say, hey, I think you guys should really support the traditional Hindu calendar, right? And they will make a determination of whether they want to support that calendar if there's enough demand for it, and that's how that gets in.
But the only documentation publicly visible is this XML file and nothing else. There's nothing on the Unicode Consortium website that points to this list.
So this source data in turn is used in a variety of other places, right? So if you go to MDN, for example, the JavaScript documentation, you'll find the same list of IDs. There's probably something similar in Java, right? So all the platforms that actually build on this data will document these things, but the sort of source of it is owned by CLDR and is checked in by them.
Let me ask the question again more carefully. The data itself is owned by CLDR. Is the only place they document this data this file on GitHub?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Then what I'd suggest is, and one of us can go down the hall to the IANA desk and talk to them about this, but this is in effect a Unicode Consortium registry with whom we have liaisons and all that other stuff that we want to reference, but their particular referenceable thing right now is a total pain in the behind. Let's go to IANA and say, can you work out with Unicode, and maybe the ISG needs to talk to them, what we can point to that is a stable reference. We just describe it. Do not give the GitHub in the document. Just simply say Unicode, CLDR list of mumblefoo. Right? Done. That's what we're going to put in there. Let IANA go figure out how to connect up the thing.
Pete, before you sit down. Thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah.
How do we do it for IDNs? Because Unicode owns that. They
don't, and so the division of labor is much clearer there, right? They own the Unicode standard, but we and that Unicode standard they publish in books, and there's probably a DOI and stuff. That's easy to reference.
Right, okay.
What we're saying is the Unicode didn't make this easy to reference.
I got it. Thanks.
And if I can add to that, what made me wonder about this is that in the draft, it says, at the time of writing, this information is collected in CLDR calendar, which is the GitHub, which also made me wonder, okay, when, it could change, and how do we then find this information, because it's not stable reference. So this was the comment, yeah. But Pete's suggestion is great to let them figure out.
And so
it sounds like we have a plan. Yeah.
This sounds great. Let me see if I want to repeat back and make sure, because I can, while I'm working on the PR, I can just make the change here. Is essentially to take the link out, to still say CLDR owns the valid list of IDs that are needed here. Please contact CLDR for the info. Is that sort of the right way to put it, or?
This is Pete. So no, make believe that there is a book that Unicode publishes, okay? And write the reference in the document as if you're pointing to that book. CLDR list of calendar, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna make believe that it exists.
You can say, IANA, please replace. with-"
IANA, go figure out where this thing is. But make it look like just a reference. And then someone else is gonna deal with making it better.
Okay, deal.
Yeah, when we, sorry, the right way to say this. When we talk about, when an IANA consideration section, for example, if you want to refer to a registry that IANA owns, you just name the registry. You don't give the URL of the registry. I mean, some recent documents have started doing that, but for the longest time, the actual representation of the registry, which is what that is not what you reference. You just reference, because if they could, let's do JSON tomorrow. You know what? All the XML things break after that. So just, you want an indirection that CLDR promises will be permanent forever, and then we use that.
Okay. And just to clarify that, that won't prevent this RFC from being published. Like, do we have to wait for IANA to do that before we get an RFC number for this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you in a hurry?
Well, I mean, depends on what hurry means. I mean, this week, no, but sometime in the next few months, we're hoping to remove. So one of the things on the ECMAScript side, we are hesitant to ship browser implementations that use this format until we're pretty sure that it's gonna not change. And so we would certainly like it to be more official before we get Chrome and Firefox out there putting their neck out.
I mean, I can't imagine this would take 3 months to resolve, but I mean, don't hold me to that because I've never tried this before. Yeah, I mean, we can make sure that IANA, or if necessary, the liaison has the request before we walk out of here tomorrow.
Yeah,
that's great. And who is? Because I'm very much not there. Are one of you guys taking the action item to do that and follow up?
I will take this action item.
Awesome. Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that covers the reference issue. The other one was around the guidance for the other open issue that I believe I haven't already resolved in the PR is the guidance for IANA for what gets into the registry. Is Francesca, was that the gist of your feedback?
Yeah. So when there is a registry, IANA registry created with the designated expert that is supposed to decide on what goes into the registry and what does not, then there needs to be a section or a paragraph or something in the draft that says this is what the expert needs to look at. So give some guidance to the expert. And I'm sure Carsten has a lot of experience with that. I don't think we need to wordsmith exactly what needs to go in there. I don't think this is controversial. It just needs to be there, and you need to just think a little bit about what can be like the deciding factors for that. But in general, it's not hard.
That sounds great. And do we want to, because I know we have a few minutes left, do we want to just try to come up with wording right now, or do we want to save that for later?
I would suggest do it offline.
Okay. Those are the only issues I got. I'm just essentially waiting for somebody to review the PR. Oh, and Francesca, you had a lot of comments around error handling, and I had actually added a bunch of error handling comments already in the PR, and I added more after your feedback just to make sure that we were all covered. I had one question, which was there's one area I think where you called out the need for error handling, and what I said there was essentially a summary of what's discussed elsewhere in the document, and then I just added a link to point people down to the place where all the error handling info is. And I assume that's okay?
Yes, that's definitely fine. I can take a look if you tell me where that is, or Grant can.
Yeah,
on
it's
the screen.
right here on the screen here, and that link should be, we could post that link in the chat. Actually, Bron, you have it up. Do you want to just stick that in the chat? And...
This link here, yep.
Yeah. In our infinite infinite video.
Yeah. So this is all the changes, and obviously from this page you can see the individual items as well.
Yeah, and it's also easier if you want to go through commit by commit. That's probably an easier way to review.
Like so. And it has a long conversation on it.
Most of that conversation is either me calling out why various changes were made or asking for reviews.
Yeah. All right, and these are the remaining open issues on the GitHub repository. Is there anything here we want to discuss?
That's a great question. I would love to just go through, Karsten, you called out, I think there were several open issues. I think 2 of them are addressed by the PR already, but there might be some that aren't, so it might be good to spend our time going through those.
Yeah, well, of course, I will have to check whether they are addressed in the way that the working group would address them. So I think the main interesting one is the error handling thing, where actually I managed to leave in a CREF. CREF is the IETF word for editor's comment, where the error handling is kind of squishy at the moment and probably needs to be hardened up a little bit. And Francesca mentioned that in her review. And I think basically we have to balance the fact that we will have to process erroneous instances with the fact that as soon as you promise to process erroneous instances in a certain way, they are de facto no longer erroneous because they have a well-defined semantic, so why not just send them? That's always a difficult editorial situation. How do you handle something like that? So right now it says if you have conflicting items, you take the first. So the recipient has the onus to take the first item if several are conflicting. That essentially takes the onus completely off the sender to actually send something that is correct. And so this needs to be rebalanced in such a way that this onus is reestablished. But more generally, the question is, even if we say it must be handled by using the first, shouldn't be there some text about inconsistent datetime strings and how they should be handled in general. And right now there is some pretty wishy-washy text that licenses the recipient to reject, to not act on inconsistent strings. And I think it's important to have that in there. So I would try to rebalance these 2 phrases to actually say the right thing.
So I'll share what I have.
Do this on.
I can share what I put in the PR so far, which is I split out the text around duplicates from the text around conflicts, because I actually think those might be different issues, and that for conflicts, I think we already sort of have a plan there. At least I thought we did, which is if you have a critical flag, right, then it needs to be understood and dealt with. And if there's a conflict between something with a critical flag and something else, then it needs to be rejected, or it needs to be dealt with in some way by the recipient, to fix the problem. If it's not marked with a critical flag, then it's kind of open season. It's up to the recipient to decide what they want to do. They either can reject it or not, and it's up to them. And so my assumption is, if that's how we're working for values, then we should probably also essentially say that's a generic mechanism, whereas if you really care about error handling and you're the sender, then stick a critical flag on it. And if you don't, then it's up to the recipient to decide what to do. What do you think of that?
Sounds good.
Any objection to that being the model?
Sounds good to me.
And then the duplicate ones, I sort of, so if essentially what that means is there are duplicates that don't conflict, right? Which can either be a case where, let's say you have you have a calendar and then another calendar, and neither one have the critical flag on them. I think the current plan is that you just pick the first one. I just don't have an opinion about that either way. I think it's kind of arbitrary. Are there any reasons why we would care about sort of first or last?
Well, I don't remember the history of that particular must that is in there at the moment. It's pretty funny because the must is in a section that is entitled informative. But that's not the meaning of the word informative there. So it's very funny. Anyway, so I would have to look up why we changed that to a must. But I think generally what we want is predictable processing. So I think it is a good idea to define this as the preferred way of doing this kind of error handling. But again, I would prefer a way to indicate very strongly that this doesn't give the sender license to just throw in everything they have and count on the recipient to sort that out. Because we want to have we want to encourage strict implementations. And there is actually an IAB RFC coming out these days that discusses this in a lot of detail, which I think was a very useful effort to do. So yeah, that will need to be checked whether we are sending all the right signals there, but I think we will need to do a full reread of the document to answer that.
Sounds great.
So of the issues that are out there, essentially everything that says 2021, we already decided to not handle. So the editors should have closed these issues. So the ones that say 2022 and 2023, that's the ones that we still have to.
All right,
Very
let's go
good.
do
Thank
this.
you. Very good.
Boom.
Beautiful.
Look at that.
Love it.
Duplicate.
Do we want to click into this explain more terminology? See which one that is?
Yeah.
I think we solved this about by 2/3. So I would have to check the text.
I think it's currently, because I was just working on this yesterday. There is a tag, and a tag can have a key and a value, and then 0 or more tags, or 1 or more tags, is a suffix. I think that's the current terminology that's used. Is that okay?
I think that's a good picture. Yes.
So, because that's what's currently in the text. So if that's okay, we can probably close this, I think.
Cool.
Karsten, is that good with you?
I don't know. I look at the text and then I tell you.
Okay, sounds good. I love that blue hat.
All right. Duplicate calendar annotations. Did we make a decision on this? It was.
Can we click in and see if there's information in there that? Oh, interesting. So it sounds like there's already some precedent on the Unicode side. Scroll up to the top of. So Unicode picks the first one when there's a duplicate, which, I mean, in the absence of any other precedent, that sounds fine with me.
Cool.
Yeah, and I asked for chapter and verse because I really would like to reference this in the document.
And I think the caveat there is if anything is marked as critical, then it should take precedence over anything else, right? So it should be the first critical is the winner, and then the next critical after that, and then it should go down the list from there.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was afraid of, that we would come up with the detailed instructions that you need to be able to eat out of a soup bowl. And I would prefer the protocol not to turn into soup in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you lost me on that analogy.
Right.
Yeah, the term soup is a term of art.
All right.
For a document that has lost normative.
I have a proposal. First one
Okay.
takes precedence. If there's any critical and there's anything else, then it's invalid.
That's pretty much what I would arrive at. Yes.
Yeah.
Got it. So explain. Can you write an example of? Because it would probably be easier to see. Yep, that's great. Love it. And I could just write that into the PR. That's so simple.
What's one of the other examples from this thing? Oh, we've got Coptic Japanese.
Chinese is a popular one.
Cool. So Chinese, Japanese, etc.
Yeah.
Not going to do the rest of that.
I certainly did not expect, like 2 years ago, to become probably one of, I don't know, 1,000 people in the world who really, really, really understands like 20 different calendars. It's a very strange thing to learn about. Good.
Something like that.
This is great.
Cool.
Oh, that's
Okay.
interesting. That's not what I thought the sentence up there meant. But
If there's any critical and there's multiple, then the whole thing's invalid. You can't have a critical item and also have another value with the same thing.
okay, that is interesting.
I think that's
sort of that.
if you're going to put a critical in there, then you've got to understand it. And you've got to understand it. Then you can't be adding another one. I think that's cleaner.
Yeah.
It's cleaner than trying to go, well, you must do the critical one and ignore the other one, even if it's first, because that would be just obnoxious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So this is may behavior of the recipient, because the recipient may also reject the whole thing if it has.
I mean, the recipient can reject whenever it feels like.
Yes.
But yeah, I think if you've got multiple, you're already on thin ice. And if you've got multiple and one of them is critical, then you're just bad.
And you want to open up this one here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow, this is
Yeah, that's the usual problem, that if you have item of data that references something else and that something else changes, what does the item of data mean?
mm-hmm.
Oh, I think this one. I think I might have addressed this one. Scroll down. Can you scroll down a little more? Oh, maybe not that far.
Editorial changes, fixes.
Yeah. So there's a
Did you click that?
No, let's do that now. I was just going to write something completely obnoxious in the chat, but I could stick it here. There we go. This is what I was going to say.
Yeah, but that's significant new content.
I'm just being silly. But
yeah,
I mean, that's how you do it, right?
Yeah, that's how you do it.
If you care, you reference a specific copy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
but does the time zone database give you the history information? You would need to actually.
It has version numbers.
I mean, you can get it if you want to, but in practice, systems generally keep one copy and one copy only, and they replace the old one. So I think the answer there is, if you want that level of precision, then you need to define a new extension that's not the legacy Java compatible existing time zone extension, but it's something new. And it's totally reasonable to do that, but it's just out of scope of what we're doing here.
Yeah, I agree. I was just being silly.
Yeah.
It's late on Thursday.
It's, dude, don't even tell me how late it is. It's like 1:22 in the morning for me. So
all right.
I have no sympathy.
Cool. So that sounds like that's done.
Okay. Let's open this. This one's pretty new. The Karsten, your note about GMT.
Yeah, there was one comment that said we are mentioning these legacy GMT things that are unfortunately encoded the wrong way around. And we probably should either not mention them or add a caveat that these are totally weird.
Oh, here we go. I think in I just removed mentioning this time zone completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can.
Did I
click
on that? I did click on that.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, did I link the
What's
wrong
going
thing?
on? I think I'm clicking the wrong
Oh
thing.
yeah, click on, there we go. Yeah, that was right.
There we go. That's the actual change.
Good. Yeah, so I essentially just took out those links completely and just replaced them with simpler text.
Yeah. That's the easy way. Just avoid talking about it.
Yeah.
I like it. So can we declare these two done?
So when the PR is merged, those will be closed automatically. So
cool.
let's leave them open for now because they're still a problem.
Yeah, they are not merged, so you cannot close them.
Yep.
Well, yeah. So I think it looks like we're pretty good here. I think the terminology one, it seems like Karsten's going to take a look at that and close it if it's already addressed. And I think we've now addressed the duplicate issue, and I will add another commit to the PR that adds what Bron, which you just suggested around rejecting any duplicates if any of them are critical. I think that's a great idea, and it will be super easy to write in there. And then I'll add a commit that that essentially references this issue, and that way all three of these issues here can get closed if we merge the PR. Does that sound good?
Cool.
Okay.
Perfect.
Deal.
Thank you. All right.
Excellent.
We have 5 minutes remaining. I would like to suggest that once this document has completed its path through the system, that we close the working group. That's what I am feeling the consensus of the group is. Does anyone have anything to say about that? Any other work you would like us to do that you believe is in charter? Fantastic. Thank you. And thanks, Francesca. I hope your next however many months it is that you're away goes well. I look forward to seeing you when you're back.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cool. Hey.
All right. Are we are there more topics, or are we done for the day?
We are done.
That's great.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for, I hope I never see you again.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well. All right. Yeah. Well, next week, and then you're happy with text. Well, I will cherry pick stuff out of the and make sure we can trace the link to this income. Cool. Awesome. Anything else you need from us? No, I just wanted to mention that last meeting in SIBO, we said we assume this will go forward, and we try to synchronize this. So we will essentially wait for another month or so, and then we should on and stuff. And I still have to make sure that the last minute changes we're making here are probably